Cuba is a mess right now, but who's to blame? How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about the protests that broke out in Cuba on Sunday, July 11th, 2021, and still may be happening right now today, which is Monday. Now, protests and whatnot in Cuba are kind of uncommon from what I'm reading because of the government. I mean, you can't just do whatever you want like you can here in the U.S. You could protest, screech, holler, Black Lives Matter, ACAB. You can do that for the most part without going to the penitentiary. But in Cuba, not so much. There are already been reported hundreds of people arrested for protesting, which means there are probably thousands out there in the streets. I'm not really sure how many thousand, just single digits, 10,000, 100,000. I'm not really sure how many. But there's quite a few protesters out there in the streets. Now, what are they protesting? What are the reasons? Well, let's get into it. The obvious thing is the government. The communist regime has not been working for the past 60 or so years. People are starving. They're dying of hunger. There's a lack of medicine. There are some serious problems. Now, speaking of freedom and things like that we have over here that they don't have in Cuba, I was reading an article, I think it might have been New York Times, and I'll place an excerpt of that article on the screen before you. And they're talking about there were certain anti-government slogans like freedom chanted in the protests. It's like, all right, if the word freedom is an anti-government protest, you're not doing government right. And that is the problem with Cuba. This is why so many Cubans had to flee. I'm not really sure how it is right now. I mean, do you still need to do the Elian Gonzalez? You got to go on an inner tube or swim to Florida to get to freedom? Or can you just leave with the visa? I'm not really sure. But a lot of Cubans had to escape the Castro regime. Now, I know Fidel's dead. I think Raul's dead too. They got another guy in there right now who's not really doing any better, trying to blame the U.S., talking about the embargo, and that's the reason why Cuba is the way it is. First of all, this is totally wrong. The embargo is being seen as the blockade. Now let's get into that because this is really important. We really got to just dig into it. The blockade was a literal physical blockage of the island. There were naval ships from the U.S. that encircled Cuba to prevent people from coming and going, at least on the water. The air, I'm not sure, but that's a different story. I digress. That only existed in the year 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is when JFK was still living, okay? 1962. So after the crisis was over, the blockade was lifted again in 1962 when JFK was still living. There's not been a blockade since 62. So if you see anything talking about in the blockade, El Bloqueo, all this, that, and the third, there is no more blockade. That was only around for part of 1 year, about 50, 60 years ago. That's over with. It's done. There is, however, a trade embargo between the U.S. and Cuba, not between Cuba and the entire world. So if you cannot get certain things from the U.S., why not other countries? Why not your former colonial power, Spain? Why not other Caribbean independent nations? Why not a place like Brazil? Why not Mexico? Why not somewhere else? Why not Canada? Why not some European place? Why must it be the U.S.? Okay. And also, as far as the trade embargo is concerned, since 2000, there have been certain exceptions like food and medicine. And what are the two main things that are out there protesting right now? A lack of food and a lack of medicine. So how are you going to blame the U.S. for what they're protesting for when the two exceptions for trade between the U.S. and Cuba are food and medicine, humanitarian needs? And if you doubt that, I'll link to some sources in the box below. You can read it for yourself and see what's going on. And quite frankly, is it even our responsibility to feed them and take care of them as far as medicine? I heard that you can go to Cuba and be a doctor for free, but you rely upon the U.S. for your import of medicine and want to blame us when you don't have enough? How does it make any sense? Before Castro, Cubans were able to feed themselves. Now they got to import chicken from the U.S. and then still blame the U.S. for not having it. I think Cubans that live in Florida, Cubans that live in Cuba, understand that it's not the U.S.'s fault. It's the failing government's fault. It's communism's fault. It's socialism's fault. The same thing happening in Venezuela and other parts of the world. Now, some are going to say, well, what about Norway, ABL? They're socialists. No, they're not. First of all, Norway is protected by the U.S. and our military, so let's just have that be right there. But second of all, they are a capitalist economy. Calling them socialists is like calling the U.S. socialist. There are certain little welfare programs. That does not mean they are a socialist country or a communist country. China is more communist, but they also have a capitalist economy. But see, the thing about China, you have all that government control, the one-party rule. Try doing the thing that the government doesn't like. Try being some kind of way, quote unquote, offensive to the government. You might get, you might not get found anymore. You might pop up missing, like Jack Ma was totally gone for some months. Where is he at? What's going on? A lot of guys end up in jail, dead, or whatever because of the government. So to talk about China and places like that are communist or socialist as some kind of example of how it can be done, obviously these are not very good examples. You see what's going on in Cuba right now. The people are starving due to the government's system. It's not a good system. Everybody knows it. And then the worst take I've seen is that Cubans are out there protesting because of the virus and they don't have enough vaccines. Really? The virus? Maybe if they had proper health care on the island, then this wouldn't be a thing. Like the virus is just another aggravator that was placed on the already strained system. It wasn't like, oh, okay, the virus is here, there's not enough vaccines, all this, that, and the third, and we're going to go out there and protest. No, this has been an ongoing issue for many, 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 many years, long before China and the bats and the rats and the cats and the dogs got involved allegedly, or the lab allegedly. Long before that, this has been a very serious problem. People would swim from Cuba to Florida, a 90-mile trip over the Atlantic. They'd swim, get on an inner tube, risk their life to flee to come to America, right? That's what's going on. And shout out to all the Cubans out there protesting with American flags. I said, you guys, that seems to be the flag of choice for protests around the world for actually oppressed people, not people that go to Starbucks on the iPhone and the Apple iPad, chilling, hanging out, not working, but still got a big fat belly. You understand what I'm saying? I'm talking about truly oppressed people that get killed for opposing the government on something real simple. You go out there and protest and you get killed and there's not even anything you could do about it. That's actual oppression. What we have over here in the U.S., you have this fake oppression, this self-imposed oppression. People that got to create all types of weird identities for themselves. 1,001 genders, like you got 1,001 Dalmatians. You make those things up to create some type of oppression narrative of yourself. But as I close, I want to say this. The issues in Cuba can be seen here in the U.S. if we go down that road. If we go down the road of communism, of socialism, things can go very bad. It happened in South America, Argentina, and their government didn't go well. At one point, Argentina was seen as a rival to the U.S. economically. And look at where they are now. Kind of like second world, not really a factor. Venezuela was at one point a great place, not anymore. Cuba at one point was a great place, not anymore. We see what bad governments do to countries. You can have all the economic might in the world, all the military might in the world, but bad leadership, bad decisions can turn that on its head, and it's really ugly when it happens. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? How do you feel about the protests happening right now in Cuba? Are they a good thing, bad thing? What are they protesting? Is it the virus? Is it the U.S. and the so-called blockade that's not been there in 60 years? Whatever your thoughts on those things are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at with it. It's not the U.S.'s fault. It's the fault of the Cuban government. So when the president's talking about, oh, it's the U.S. is to blame, why is it us? Let's just say the trade embargo between the U.S. and Cuba affected everything, food, medicine, everything from the U.S. Okay, that's just one country out of 190. Why not find another trade partner? Why not find more trade partners, plural? Why? Why does it have to be the U.S.? I believe the embargo is a scapegoat for the failures of the government. Like I said, they were able to feed themselves independently without having to import chicken from the U.S. before Castro. So why can't they do it now? I'm having a hard time understanding. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.